Welcome to Sterling Visionary Voices, the podcast dedicated to bringing you diverse, innovative leadership insights and actionable strategies for success. Join hosts Laura McNeil and Bob Medeiros as they explore the art and science of role model leadership through thought-provoking conversations with real professionals. Whether you're a seasoned leader or aspiring to excellence, Sterling Visionary Voices is your guide to navigating the complexities of your leadership journey.
Unplanned events that introduce challenge, crisis, or chaos when approached with a creative mindset can typically provide opportunities for game-changing breakthroughs. Breakthrough leaders seize these moments to explore a world of new possibilities for themselves, for their organizations, and for the communities that they serve. With us today is Karen B. Moore, a role model breakthrough leader herself. She is CEO and founder of Moore Incorporated. Karen is recognized by many in Florida as the woman who broke through the glass ceiling in the capital city's business community. Starting her own business in 1992 in a public affairs industry dominated by men, she has become a national industry leader and the first woman to chair the boards of numerous business organizations and nonprofits in Tallahassee and statewide. Karen has been named annually by Florida Trend magazine as one of the 500 most influential Florida business leaders and one of the 100 most influential in Florida politics. She is listed as one of the top 10 communication leaders in the U.S., regularly sought after for her strategic insight in a crisis. In 2024, Karen received the distinguished honor of being named Person of the Year by Public Relations News. She is a frequent public speaker and has facilitated strategic marketing, advocacy, and media training sessions for numerous Fortune 500 companies, top Florida CEOs, as well as the British Olympic team. Welcome to Visionary Voices, Karen. I personally am very excited to chat with you today. I recently learned that you were honored with the John A. Pieno Jr. Leadership Award at the 33rd Sterling Leadership Conference. And I'm wondering if we could start out with a question around behaviors. What consistent behaviors over the years do you credit most for receiving that recognition? And which of those behaviors do you believe are the hardest to scale as organizations grow?
Well, Laura, first of all, thank you so much. It's an honor to be talking with you today. You know, last year, as you've mentioned, I received the John A. Pieno Leadership Award as the inaugural recipient. So to think that I would be recognized in the same category as John Pieno is a lifetime of recognition of the great work that he's done, and I hope I have stood up to his test of leadership. You know, I think what I learned from John is that decisions need to be data-based. What I have found over my 32 years as a CEO is that it's very easy to make emotional decisions. It's very easy to have people you respect or colleagues come to you and want something, need something, recommend something. And what I have found is they all are good wishes, but they can't be accepted unless the data is there to justify it. And that's especially true around financial decisions, hiring decisions, decisions that ultimately may reflect back on reputation. And so as I do a lot of crisis work, reputation management, crisis communication really needs to be about making decisions on as much data as you can.
As Moore has expanded services and impact, what specific cultural practices, rituals, meetings, or stories that you could share helped you keep your performance bar high without burning the people that work for you out?
Well, I have to tell you that as the CEO of a company, I believe establishing the vision, the mission, and the culture is my job. I don't think that that is the job of anyone else but the number one buck stops here person. So in order to do that, my decisions are what is in the best interest of the overall team, and then what's in the best interest of each of the individuals on the team. So I think recognition is key. Everyone likes to be seen and valued. I think over communicating and transparency are key things that make a leader successful. And so what I hope is that people will recognize in our business, marketing, public relations, public affairs, the retention rate of employees is about 50%. The grass is always greener somewhere else. And we want people, if they feel like they need to move on. But I believe if you create a culture that says you are valued, you're appreciated, you are doing important things, not only for our clients, but for the company as a whole, then you want to stay. And we have higher than a 90% retention rate of employees. Again, unprecedented in our industry.
I would imagine then that that's one of the metrics you use to determine whether your leadership team is doing the right things and whether the culture and the mission and the vision are appropriately aligned. Are there any other metrics that you look at in order to determine whether you need to recalibrate or refocus or redefine?
So employee engagement scores are very important to me. We do everything from individual connections, which could be during the work or after work, to just talk to them, get their pulse. We also have an outside third-party anonymous organization that does interviews and surveys for us. I think that's important also, that people know that they feel that they want to be heard and are given the opportunity to do that. I'm not as big a 360-degree person other than leadership. When you start to get the kinds of numbers of employees that small to medium to larger size businesses have, you spend more time doing 360s work than you do the actual work of the client. So I think there's a time and a place for it. It's just not my highest priority. I feel like I am very in tune with top leadership. I want to be in tune from the latest hire on up to the COO of the company.
Very cool. So, you know what? I'd like to shift, if you don't mind, to understanding a little bit about the work that your leadership team does. I know you mentioned earlier that you're focused on crisis management, accommodating clients that find themselves in need of, crisis support or chaos. How have you seen your organization evolve over time, especially in the changes that we've recently seen economically, politically, geographically? There's constant change. Technologically, with the advent of AI. Can you talk to what your organization does, and then some of the challenges and the forces of change that you're dealing with today?
Such a great question, Laura. Well, first of all, when I opened the company 30 plus years ago, it was going to be a one-person shop. I called it the More Communications Group because the group was me, myself, and I. And what I found is that was successful, but to continually ratchet up, continually being able to support clients with their needs, I needed to expand our services. So we went from just PR to incorporating marketing, incorporating advertising, web design, creative, research. And of course, now we are considered one of the leading experts in our industry on how to use AI in those areas. My personal passion is crisis in public affairs, but we are the A to Z agency. In fact, we're the largest one in the Southeast, and as you said, one of the largest nationally, but also internationally. And so what's the biggest game changer, I think, right now is the influence that AI is bringing to the table. I think there's a real fear among clients, a fear among employees, fear in the business community. But I'm a person that always sees the glass half full, not half empty. And I think we are in unprecedented times to move at the speed of lightning. And as long as we know how to keep the human touch attached to that, these are the best of times. And so I think right now for businesses, along with my business, is what is artificial intelligence and all of those things. I'll just use that as the catchphrase at the 80,000 foot. What is it going to mean to our industry? I'm old enough, I remember typing out a press release, Xeroxing it, and then hand delivering it to a reporter. So I don't know what they'd do if they were handed a press release anymore. They need to have it instantly, and they need to have it in sound bites, and they need the data attached to it, and they need more than just here's an officially approved sound bite. So what AI is doing, I think, is extraordinary, and it ought to be the number one priority for small to medium businesses right now. How can they leverage it? How can they recognize the challenges that it brings? How do they manage those challenges? And then what is it that inspires them to be more innovative because of AI?
I love your excitement for the topic. I really do, because like you, I was one of those individuals who walked around with punch cards. I went to college at such a time where you couldn't even get a major in comp sci. I had to be satisfied with a mathematics major and a minor in computer science while I was walking down the hallway with my punch cards. So
you're so smart. NASA should have snatched you up.
Oh, that's too funny. I do know that you're preparing a keynote speech for the next Sterling conference. And I've heard you reference the future won't wait at one point along the line. So I'd like to ask you, what does an accelerated world look like to you right now? And what's one leadership habit that leaders must unlearn in order to keep pace with that accelerating world?
Another great question. I meet on a regular basis with fellow CEOs around the country and the world. And what I find is true for what has been true for 1,000 years. And that is leaders, especially C-suite leaders, think they have to be the smartest person in the room. They have to be the most strategic. They have to be the fastest thinker. They need to be all things in order for them to inspire the troops to stand behind them. In this age, I don't think that's true anymore. I think what you have to do is surround yourself with strategic thinkers, fast-working individuals, smart folks, innovative folks. But they then give you their best counsel, and you can make smart, fast decisions, but it's not all on your shoulders anymore. And I think we started to see that probably turning in the last decade. I think COVID may have had some connection to that when you no longer sat in the same room with all of your C-suite people. Now you can have leadership team members, yes, in the same office, but they may be in a different state, a different country. And so I think leveraging them to be the smartest, fastest, most strategic is the new way of thinking. I also believe that leaders who are great entrepreneurs maybe are not the best person to recognize the next and upcoming generations, because they may or may not be having the same entrepreneurial passion that you have. And so leaders have to embrace all kinds of personalities. My father worked at what was then Martin Marietta, Lockheed Martin now. Everything was a decision from the top down, and you said, yes, sir, and you stayed. My father stayed for 40 years, got his official thank you luncheon and a gold watch. Now that's not valid or even comprehended by the next few generations that are out there. And so I think you have to embrace change, and that's a hard thing to do.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think COVID really has changed the landscape for many. It's broadened our minds to understand that you don't have to be sitting in the same room to leverage the brightest and the best and to work collaboratively together. The tooling, even you and I talking on this podcast through quote unquote Zoom recording studio technology, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you would have had to go to a recording studio, or 10 years ago. I mean, Zoom was not as widely leveraged. I fully agree with you. And the generational values have shifted dramatically. I believe there's more value, as you adequately alluded to, on family and work-life balance. And I grew up in you stayed for 10, 20, 30 years and you got your grandfather clock. Now nobody even has a grandfather clock. They're all at Goodwill.
Exactly. And nobody wants them there either.
That's right. It's a challenge, I think, for some leaders to unlearn those cultural values, beliefs, behaviors, way that things should be working. And it's interesting now that the Googles and the Yahoos and the tech-savvy companies are actually going back to 5-day in the office work weeks.
Yeah. I will admit to anyone, don't fully understand work-life balance, because it's a generic term and I think it means something different to everyone. My son works for Google. He works remote. But the new hires, Google has said, you're coming into the office. You need to be around your peers to learn from each other more than what you can really interpret over looking at their face on a screen. So I like that we're starting to, it'll not be 180 switch back ever, because I think there are people that work very successfully remote. And I do think the hybrid model proved itself during COVID. But I am of the generation that loves to walk down the hall and say, good morning. What are you working on? What's your challenge today? Is there any way I can help you with that? And so I think the technology has made it easier to allow people to focus on doing the job smarter, faster, more strategic. But gosh, we got to keep that compassion and passion and relationship building as much as we keep the technology.
I agree. It's definitely a delicate balance. And I do like the point you made about work-life balance can be defined differently, so differently, person to person.
I remember the first time I heard work-life balance. What was that? 15 plus years ago. And I laughed hysterically. I said, I don't know what work-life balance is. I know what I want for my family. I know what I want to do to grow my business. But if I sat down and said, at any one point, are they equal? No, never. They've never been equal. Work-life balance to me now, for me, is what do I do to make the most of the time I have? And how can I see to it that it is allowing me to enjoy the moment? And the moment might be solving a client crisis. The moment might be getting a bill passed in the legislature. The moment might be getting some patient medication they need. And on the other hand, the moment might be sitting down with a glass of wine out on the porch with my husband. It might be saying to our son, what are you doing Friday night? We're going to fly in and say hi to you. So again, as you said, work-life balance is something different and interpreted, not just the individual, but I think generational work-life balance has big defining differences.
Well said. I love the sitting down with my husband with a glass of wine. It's interesting because when I first heard the term work-life balance, I was working at AT&T. And as a manager, we were instructed to tell our staff, we're going to implement this thing, work-life balance. What that means is that you only have to be in the office between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. If you need to do your appointments, you do them before 9 a.m. or after 3 p.m. We're giving you flexibility to leave the office after 3 and not be in the office until 9. And how has that changed?
Well, being able to set your appointments after 3 and before 9 is a challenge to start with, but then to spin it as a message is how we're so supportive of you is actually a little humorous.
Exactly. Well, Karen, it's really been a pleasure. I know how busy your schedule is. I appreciate you fitting us in and letting me sit down and have a nice hearty chat with you. Thank you so much.
Let's do this again. It was a lot of fun. I'd love to interview you and ask some of the same questions.
Oh, wouldn't that be interesting? That would,
Yeah,
that'd be an interesting spin for our listeners. Let's tee that up.
indeed.
Thank you so much, Karen. Enjoy your day.
Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Sterling Visionary Voices, Insights for Role Model Leadership from the Sterling Council. Discover more and connect with us at sterlingvisionaryvoices.com.